Hello, everyone. Welcome to All In 2024. I'm excited to be here. I know we only have 20 minutes, so the first thing I want to say before diving in, Scale AI, we have a booth over there just next to the entrance of the main stage. So I would love to continue this conversation after. If you have any questions that we can get into, please don't be shy. Stop by. We have a team there. I will be there and happy to talk more about this topic. My topic today is sharing lessons from the work that we're doing at Scale AI. I call it the AI Playbook for business leaders. Quickly about myself before diving in. I have been working in the AI and analytics space for the past 8 years or so. I'm currently a senior investment director at Scale AI, Canada's AI innovation cluster, where we invest in AI innovation projects across industries and across Canada. My previous life, I was a management consultant with the Boston Consulting Group. And before diving into the content that I have for you, people always say to start your presentation with a joke, to lighten the mood. Personally, I've been struggling with that. As a German, I am not the funniest person. Actually, my wife keeps on telling me that my jokes are pretty bad. But fortunately, that's not a problem anymore these days. I just went to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, hey, can you give me a funny opening line for my presentation today on how to make AI work for businesses? And here's what I got. If AI were a superhero, it would be a bit like Batman. Impressive gadgets, a bit mysterious, and occasionally needs a good butler to make it run smoothly. If you don't take anything else away from my presentation, I think this is a pretty good summary of what I'm going to talk about in the next 20 minutes. But I know you didn't come here for stand-up comedy, so let's get into the serious content of my presentation. In a nutshell, my talk today is about these two pictures here. On the left, what you see is AI in the media. AI is disrupting industries, businesses, and turning every employee into a hyper-productive superhuman. On the right is what the reality looks like for most corporate leaders. Bad data, legacy systems, and manual processes hampering AI adoption. If the right-hand side doesn't look familiar to you, congratulations. Then you can leave now and check out one of the other great events that we have today. I don't really see anyone leaving, so I think it's fair to assume that most of you are at least somewhat familiar with the right-hand side. So that's good, then you're in the right place. If it makes you feel better, though, you are definitely not alone. What we did here, this has some research that we've been doing over the last 2 years. These are the top performing countries in terms of AI adoption. And if you look at these countries, it's kind of stunning. There's still 1/3 to 1/2 of companies in those countries that still haven't really started using AI at all. Then in dark blue, there's another 1/3 of companies that are early adopters. So they're playing around with pilots, getting their hands dirty. And only 20 to 40 in some countries % of companies are actually seasoned AI adopters. So they've been using AI for more than 2 years and have gotten more experience in how to leverage AI for their businesses. So if you're part of those 2/3 of companies that are either very early on in their AI journey, or you haven't started on your AI journey at all, the good news is that there is a proven path that you can follow to make AI work for your business. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next 50 minutes that we have here. As an avid hiker myself, I like to think of it kind of as climbing a mountain. If you think about climbing a mountain, there are 3 things that you need. The first one is a good understanding of your starting point and your capabilities in order to pick the right trail for you. The second one is having a good and reliable map. No one likes to get lost in a forest. So we'll talk about how to define your AI strategy and roadmap to have a reliable map to get you up that mountain. And then the third piece is bringing the right equipment. So in the last part of my presentation, I want to share some of the very practical key success factors that we have seen from investing in more than 100 AI initiatives over the past 6 years. So with that, let's dive in. When I start speaking with companies here at All In, for instance, but also in my regular job at Scale AI, and I have the first conversation with them, the first question I like to ask them is, where do you see yourself on the AI maturity curve? And then they ask me, what is the AI maturity curve? So in a nutshell, this is a tool that we're using at scale to help companies understand where they're currently at and what their capabilities are. Of course, it's a simplified framework, but it really breaks down the AI capability maturity into 3 different phases. And let me maybe illustrate that with 3 conversations that I had very recently with 3 different companies. The first company was a medium-sized automotive supplier here in Canada. Their business model hasn't really changed over the past 20 years or so. But their CEO recently went to an international conference where AI and automotive was all the hype. And so he came back, called me and said, okay, I really have to figure out what AI can do for me in my industry, how it's going to affect my business. So this is a good example of a company that we would see in the exploration phase. It's really about getting a preliminary understanding of what AI can do for you in your business. And we are really here to help you share our knowledge and our experience to help you understand what are use cases and strategies to make AI work for you in your industry. But the second conversation I had was with a construction company, and they were at a different stage. They had spent 6 months or so already thinking through what are the problems that they can solve with AI in their business. And they'd also done an in-depth data assessment to understand what data do we have and where our gaps are. And now we help them come together with a Canadian AI service provider to really tackle those problems through a couple of pilot projects. So that's a good example of a company that we would see in the piloting phase, getting their hands dirty with some initial problems. And then the third one was a conversation with a major food processing company. We've been working with them for several years. They initially also started with some pilot projects, but now they really built the organizational backbone. They are using Agile throughout their whole organization. They have a number of product pods, and they're really scaling those use cases across 30 sites globally. So that's a good example of a company that is already in the scaling phase, and that's where we're trying to get most of the companies to that we're working with here. The reason why it's important to understand your starting point is that it helps you to kind of narrow down what your strategic priorities should be as a next step. And that's important because your resources are limited, so knowing where to go is kind of the first thing to be successful. If you are in the exploration phase, as an example, the 3 things that you should be most concerned with is first, doing an assessment of your talent and capabilities when it comes to AI. There are different tools out there how to use that, from Infotech to Forrester. We also have our own methodology, and I'm happy, again, to share that if you come to the booth later on and talk about that in more detail. But the second piece that's important in the exploration phase is educating your key stakeholders in your organization. So whether that's your C-suite level or one level below that, it's really important to educate them through a dedicated training program. At Scale AI, we also have a program that's just for that. So if you're interested in leveraging the funding and the resources that we have available to educate the key stakeholders in your organization, that's a core piece of our mandate. Again, I would love to talk about that if that's interesting to you. If you are in the piloting phase, your strategic priorities should be different. As I said, it's about identifying a number of pilot projects that you can tackle. And I think the previous presentation was actually really good talking about how to get started on that. But the second piece that's important here is to invest in your data and your talent gaps that you have identified in the first piece. So chances are that you probably don't have most of the AI capabilities in-house from the beginning, and that's totally fine. Frankly, most of the companies that we work with, that's their starting point. But in Canada, we are really well positioned because we have a large number of AI service and solution providers, applied research institutes, they're all here. So you have a really good set of partners that you can work with. And Scale AI, it's part of our work to bring you together with those partners. So please come and talk to us about that piece as well. In the scaling phase, once again, your priorities shift. And I would say the number one challenge here for companies is to not get stuck in what we call pilot purgatory. So in that phase where you just do one pilot after another pilot, but you don't really get to scale and see the exponential impact of AI. So here, the top priorities for you should be really around identifying, setting up a continuous process and a methodology to continuously identify AI business problems and scaling them across the organization. And hiring a critical mass of talent in-house, a good benchmark is something around like 60 to 70% of core capabilities should be in-house by that time if you really want to be serious about that phase. That's a key part. And the last thing is evolving your organizational structure. So in the piloting phase, typically what we see is you have a small number of agile product pods that are driving your pilot projects forward. But in that last phase, that's really not enough anymore. It's really about setting up an organizational structure which, for instance, could be a digital factory model or a center of excellence with a large number of product and platform pods that drive your digital and AI transformation across your business. So now that you know your starting point, the next question is, how can I create a map that leads me to my AI objectives? So this is where building an AI strategy comes in. And I know AI strategy sounds like a fancy word, you know. If you talk to consulting companies, it's like the next hot thing that they're trying to sell you. But in the end, I would say building an AI strategy is not that different from creating a normal business strategy, which most C-suites are probably quite used to at this point. And there are three core elements to it: vision, AI roadmap, and enablers. So let's walk through this. The first step is vision. And there are two pieces here that I really want to highlight. The first one is your AI strategy starts in your C-suite, but it doesn't start in a vacuum. So it should always be directly linked to your business strategy. To give you an example, I worked with a logistics company for the last couple of months, and their business priority was to become a market leader by building a world-class distribution network. And so we talked about their AI strategy and their vision, and one key piece was to link their AI strategy to that objective. So how can AI help me to create this world-class distribution network? And I'll go into more detail. We see how that trickles down to the AI roadmap just in a second. But the second important piece here is to have a realistic level of ambition. And what I mean by that is, again, I'm simplifying here, but if you think 5 to 10 years out from now, where do you see your organization at? Do you see yourself as an AI first or an AI enabled organization? AI first for us means that your core product, your core services are really directly driven by AI. So that could be an analytics software company, for instance, or a gaming company. Whereas an AI-enabled company, it's much more about seeing AI as a tool to improve your processes and driving efficiencies in your organization. So that's where the logistics company that I just talked about was at. The second piece then is to think about how does this vision translate into my AI roadmap. And the key pieces of an AI roadmap are to first start with a number of use cases that are linked to the business objectives that I have. So coming back to the example I just talked about, the logistics company, their business objective was how can we create this world-class distribution network. So the use cases that they started with were things like improving our demand forecasting, improving our scheduling, our routing, and doing predictive maintenance to reduce downtime. That's a good starting point. Those are all reasonable use cases that directly link to that business objective. But then the second step is how can we prioritize those use cases? Because you can't do everything at once, especially in the beginning with your limited resources. So the key how to prioritize those use cases is to think through business impact and feasibility. And when we say business impact, I often have conversations where business leaders talk to me and they say, I would like to quantify the business impact, but it's an AI project. I don't really know how to quantify it. Our perspective is we know there's more uncertainty for an AI product than for more traditional projects, but using metrics that you would use in traditional business casing, like ROI, payback period, hurdle rates, things like that, is still a good framework for AI initiatives as well. But to do that, you need two things. You need a robust impact framework, which I will talk about on the next page, and you will need benchmarks. The benchmarks, if I can do one plug here for Scale AI, we have been doing a lot of work on that over the last 1 to 2 years, and we will actually sharing some of that data with the ecosystem for free in the near future, so you can leverage those benchmarks for your own business casing and prioritize your business case for your roadmap accordingly. And the last piece here is enablers. Unfortunately, I'm just looking at time here. I won't have time to go into those enablers. But again, suffice to say that data, talent, culture, org structure, and operating model, as well as your ecosystem partnerships, are the core enablers for your AI strategy. Again, let's have that conversation after at the booth to talk about this more. I have about 2 minutes left, so the last piece that I really want to bring home here is some of the key success factors that we have seen making AI projects successful. So we now have the starting point. We know where we're starting from. We have a map. Now it's really about the equipment. So building those tools in order to be able to successfully implement projects, AI projects, on an ongoing basis. And there are 4 things that stand out, I would say, from our work. The first one is investing in the pre-work. So the projects that we support, we spend about 2 to 3 months before approving them just on the pre-work piece. And what we mean by that is understanding the business problem in depth, defining the technical problem, and doing an in-depth data assessment. I'm coming back to the example of the logistics company that I talked about. Let's say that we found through our initial research that currently our distribution network is performing subpar because our demand forecasts are off 20% on average. If that's our business problem, then the technical challenge is how can we improve our demand forecasting? That's a very, by now, common and mature machine learning problem, but there are various approaches how to do that, right? If our forecasts are mostly driven by seasonality, maybe we just pick a simple autoregressive model. If we have a lot of external signals, a more advanced multivariate approach might be more suitable. How do I know what to pick? That's really typically where your data assessment comes in. Because understanding what data you have available, what the quantity and quality is, will usually already rule out quite a bit of technical approaches that just don't make sense for where you are and the maturity point that you're at. And we always say if there's a simple way to leverage AI to solve your problem instead of like a fancy deep learning approach, then that's the way to go. The second piece here on the page is ecosystem partnerships. And without going into too much detail, I mentioned already that we're in Canada, we're uniquely positioned because we have a large number of startups, AI service and solution providers, and AI research institutes that you can draw from. And Scale AI, again, we are in the middle of that ecosystem, so we can help you find those partners. The last two pieces here are impact measurement framework and responsible AI. Robust impact framework really comes down to defining impact metrics at the technical, operational, and financial level. For the demand forecasting piece that I just talked about, it's understanding what level of performance do I need from the models in order to really have a business impact, but then translating that into operational KPIs, for instance, lost sales, and then what is the financial impact of that. That's the level of granularity you really need to understand before diving into a project. And the last one, responsible AI, it's a topic that I think you'll hear a lot about at this conference here, so I won't go into too much detail, but having those practices set up from the beginning is kind of the last success factor that we see as an important aspect to be successful with your AI projects. I'm running short on time, so I just want to summarize the last three key takeaways from my presentation here. So if that's all you remember from this presentation, 3, 6, 12 months down the road, that's good, that's enough. For the details, you can always call my cell phone and we can have a conversation about the details. But the first thing that I talked about was you need to know where you're starting from in order to know where you're going next. So that was the AI maturity curve that I talked about. Secondly, every company should have an AI strategy, but it's not rocket science if you follow the elements that we talked about, vision, roadmap, and enablers. And lastly, although AI projects are inherently more risky than traditional projects, the best practices and success factors can really mitigate execution risks to help you being successful on your AI projects. So with that, I want to end my presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions right now, but once again, I invite you to come see us at the Scale AI Hub over there and dive into your specific problems and challenges to make you successful on your AI journey. Thank you very much.